Welcome back to another episode of the Better Than I Found It podcast. You're listening to Mike McGraw, the men's golf coach at Baylor. My guest today is Howard University golf coach Sam Humphreys Jr. Sam and I are going to talk about the now epic years that he spent as the director of the East Lake Junior Golf Academy in Atlanta in the late 1990s and early 2000s. His impact on several of those at-risk kids was really dramatic, and his influence on these kids continues to this day. Sam was an assistant coach for Stanford when they won the 2007 NCAA championship, and then became the following year the head coach at Michigan State, the very first African-American to lead a Power 5 conference school in golf. His 2008 Spartans captured the Big Ten title. Today, he heads up the men's and women's programs at Howard University in Washington, D.C. Join me as Sam and I chronicle this amazing and very unique career through the coaching profession. I hope you enjoy. Welcome back, everybody, to the Better Than I Found It podcast. This is Mike McGraw. My guest today, very special friend of mine from way back earlier in my career, the current Howard University golf coach, Sam Humphreys, and author of Diamonds in the Rough. Sam, great to have you here today.
Thanks, Coach. Thanks for having me. It's exciting.
Absolutely. You and I hadn't seen each other in quite a while, and I knew you were going to be at the Merideau Collegiate about a month ago. It was really great connecting with you again and seeing you, and I'm just really excited about this new opportunity you have at Howard. And obviously, we're going to talk about that. You obviously are having a good time, I would assume.
Yeah, it's been neat. It's neat. Well, from a couple perspectives. For me, one, it's great. Now I'm getting a chance to work with the majority of my students being brown.
Yep.
I've never had that experience before in the coaching world.
Yep.
And then number two, being able to, I treat it like a piece of Play-Doh or Legos. I take it and I'm able to assemble every element or aspect of a program based on my experience and my golf knowledge to put something in place that can hopefully be successful. So for me, I get excited. Every day it's neat to get a chance to wake up and know that today I can do something that has not been done here, trying to pattern it after something that has been successful. So I'm actually really enjoying what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, I would think you're very enthused. You've had several experiences, one with the East Lake Junior Golf Academy that we're going to talk about in a minute, where you were developing young players and getting kids that were definitely disadvantaged youth and trying to bring them into this game and just change their lives. And then you had the experience at Stanford with Conrad Ray, which was, I know, an amazing experience. And then as a head coach, the first Power 5 conference head golf coach African-American. I mean, that's an amazing accomplishment in and of itself. And you guys had a great run there while you were at Michigan State. So we're going to talk about all of that, but I'm really, really glad that you're loving where you are right now. I've always believed wherever I am, it's got to be just about the best thing going. I mean, it's just a really good spot to be. And I was that way when I was a high school coach. I was that way as an assistant coach at Oklahoma State, as a head coach there, as an assistant coach at Alabama when I went down there. I love that. So I'm loving being at Baylor, and I'm just really glad you're enjoying your experience at Howard.
Yeah, it's been interesting. I'll tell you, throughout this journey of coaching, my goal was never to be a college coach. That was never my goal, to be a college coach. And at the time, my brother was coaching college football out in the Midwest. And even though he's a lot younger than me, he literally called me one day. He said, "Hey, man, I just went and played in a fundraiser. And I was out there talking to some golf coaches. He said, "You have to get into coaching." I said, "Why is that?" I said, "I'm not a college golf coach." He said, "Man, your budgets that you're running right now are larger than a college golf program." He said, "You know more golf than these guys I just played golf with." He said, "But the thing they don't have that you have is you really love young people. Like, you're able to meet young people where they are." He said, "White or black." He said, "These folks I just met don't even have a clue." And so we laughed about it. And I got off the phone with him, and I was at the time I shared it. I was married at the time, and I shared it with my ex-wife. I said, "Hey," I said, "let me tell you what my brother just said," and we just laughed. And a long time passed, and I called my brother. I said, "Hey, if I ever thought about a college job, where would I look?" And he told me where to look. And again, I did nothing about it. I mean, this stuff went on for months. And then the one conversation I think I had with myself one day, I said, if I ever went down that road, if I went down that road, I would only do it if I thought I could bring more minorities into the game, because I looked at the college landscape and it was void of color. And I said, even I love golf. My father had been an All-American in golf in '65. I know what golf looked like where I grew up. But when I look at, the golf weeks and all, and I look at the names on GolfStat, I don't see any, no, there's no hue at all. And I said that would be the only level of interest I would really have in coming into the golfing circle, would be coming as a coach, bringing some diversity, bringing some color, which I felt like at that time would allow more brown students to come into the game and participate, because there were some really good young players in communities around the country. And sure, they were speckled in here, speckled there, but they were good players. But because they really weren't mainstream, they were being missed. And so my goal was to, if I wanted to take that route, I said I wanted to create some level of opportunity for some of those students to be seen. And that's where my only interest came from as it relates to getting into golf. And once I got into college golf, and I realized that the system I had employed at Eastlake was working out there with C-Ray out of Stanford, and Conrad and I gelled so well. I said, man, this thing does work. I mean, my brother's right. What I believe in, the way I interact with young people, and then the way Conrad interacts with them from the golf perspective, and based on his experience, I said, I really think with the right match, this could be pretty neat, And I saw it happen, and it was fun to do it at Stanford. We had some great young guys on that team, but to me, they were better people than they were golfers, And so back in those days, I remember your Okie State teams and the players that you guys had, and it was neat to see at that level that not only were those guys great players, but they were good people. And that's what really convinced me more than ever. We really needed to diversify it more, because I felt like the other community was missing out. And I felt like the major community in the college golf world was missing out on the relationship they could have with the underserved. And so many years later now, I'll say that was a nice litmus test that has worked. It's been a blessing.
Yeah, and obviously you're putting it to action today at Howard in a beautiful way. And we're going to talk about some of your kids here in a minute. But okay, so let's go back to Eastlake in Atlanta. That's basically what Diamonds in the Rough is about. It's about a story about how kids from the inner city ended up playing the game of golf. And it's not all fun, exciting, happy stories either. There's a lot of darkness in there, and troubles and stress, and there's a lot of that in there, because that's the reality those kids live.
Right.
So talk to me about how you got that position, and then just hit me some highlights that people would love to hear, so it'll be inspired to come and read your book.
I tell you, God is amazing, Coach. So I was walking out of the door. I was living in Louisville. I was walking out of the door for a job interview. I grew up in Boy Scouts. I've raised money for years. I'm still I'm a believer in Scouts. I was walking out of the house to go interview with an advanced position with Boy Scouts in New Orleans. This is before cell phones. So as I'm walking out of the door, I get a call on the landline, and it's the people at Eastlake saying, hey, we've done a national search and your name has continued to come up over and over. Can you come and interview tomorrow? I said, well, no. I said, no, I can't. I'm actually going to New Orleans. I said, I know when I land in New Orleans, they're going to offer me the job. That's just how this works. And the lady on the other end of the phone, Janie, she said, well, I'll tell you what, if they offer you the job, or when they offer you the job, if you can tell them to give you an additional 2 days, we'll bring you to Atlanta and then see what we have to offer before you accept. And literally, that's exactly what I did. And I asked my wife, I said, hey, we're from North Carolina. I said, would you rather be in New Orleans or Atlanta? She said, well, Atlanta is closer to our home. And That was literally the decision. It was that simple, proximity. Now, as time would have it, as I look down the road and think about Hurricane Katrina and all that stuff, I feel really blessed that I never went to New Orleans. But the decision wasn't rocket science. It was proximity. It was a blessing to take. But when I think about Eastlake, I think you just summed it up pretty well. I mean, it's not all glitz and glamour. When you think about trying to help somebody come through a situation like a lot of those students had, I mean, you're talking about some really grisly days. I mean, I can sit here and tell you a story of a young fellow in the program. His brother killed a guy up at the Amico. I can sit here and tell you when they tore down a Kentucky Fried Chicken at the corner of Glenwood and Second Avenue, just a barrage of rats running down the street. I can sit here and tell you a story of Brandon, who I highlight in the book. And Brandon, I don't know how, but this kid is one of the brightest human beings I'd ever met. Yet he could not take a book home because you have to fight walking with a book bag through the neighborhood. And as things would have it, his house eventually got shot up. At least, I would say at least 100 rounds, 150 rounds went into his house. Luckily, his brother, who grabbed the gun from inside the house, firing back, prevented the intruders from coming in, which kept the rest of the family safe. Some of those families slept in bathtubs because when bullets are piercing walls, they're not going through that porcelain. So there are a lot of stories that when I sit back, even to this day, and these kids are now young people at 30-something years old, and they have families and they have wonderful jobs. I made a promise that you probably shouldn't make, but I told the parents if they trusted me, I would help their students get out of that situation and go to college. Why did I do that? I have no idea. But I looked at each student as a reflection of me. I put myself in their shoes and I said, if I don't do anything else, I'm gonna give them the same level of upbringing through golf that my parents gave me. And I did. And I mean, that meant when you go to that golf course, you dressed a certain way, you have good equipment, you travel to good events. I took them to etiquette training. You learn how to tie a tie. You learn how to put a napkin and fork and spoon on your table. I taught them how to order off of a menu. I got them passports. I let them so they would understand, how is it to fly abroad. I got them internships. I got them jobs, and eventually got them scholarships to college.
Well, what you did was you opened up a whole new world to them. It never would have been there at all because they wouldn't have been exposed to it.
Right.
And now they're successful, I don't know, productive adults out in the community doing good in this world. And so although it was a small sample size overall for you, relative to the entire population of the United States, it's amazing what you can do. My dad always told me, you can't change the world, but you can change your own little corner of it. And so you took that small little corner of the world, Eastlake Junior Golf Academy, and you changed some lives. So do you still keep in touch with any or all of those kids? Or
I just talked to two of them on Saturday. They played out in the outing down in Lake Oconee. I talk to them all the time.
That's wonderful.
Two of them got married. I went to their weddings. For me, they call me on Father's Day. Hey, happy Father's Day, Coach. Mr. Sam, that's what they call me to this day. They still call me Mr. Sam. Because I guess as kids, they couldn't pronounce my last name. So they all started calling me Mr. Sam. So I keep in touch with all of them. I mean, I'm excited that they, at some point in life, you start looking at what's a victory. And to me, a victory was keeping them clean, no record, education, getting a job, supporting the family, and being productive. Volunteering time, giving back. Too much is given, much is expected. Give back, but at the same time, realize that you have an obligation as a young man when you have a family. You have to be that provider. You have to be that stalwart in the house to make that difference because people are leaning on you. So yeah, I definitely keep in touch with them. It's pretty fun to keep up, actually.
That's great. You just described the story of the boy's house being shot up. There was another young boy and I apologize, I can't remember, but the story was you were on the range one day getting set up, and he was carrying groceries home. He'd done the morning shopping. What was that boy's name?
Yeah, Brandon.
Oh, that was Brandon. Okay.
That was Brandon. That was Brandon too. Yeah, Brandon actually, it's interesting. It was really early in the morning and he's walking. The thing, and this, I hope and pray one day will change in communities like this. But so many of these people do their shopping at a corner store instead of a grocery store. So many of these people get their checks cashed at a liquor store or a check cashing place instead of a bank. Brandon's situation was not unique. They all went up to the corner store and bought groceries. Brandon is walking down the street early one morning, and he was a fairly tall kid for his age. And I just do what I do to all kids. I just started talking trash, even though I didn't know him, and invited him over to see what he was made of. And he set his groceries down, and he started trying to hit golf balls. I basically gave him a lesson, and to my good fortune now, I mean, he continued to come out, and he came out every week, and he did grow to be a really tall guy. He's 6'5". All of his brothers, they're at least 6'5", 6'6". But he grew to be a good golfer. He hit the ball a country mile, but he was brilliant. I don't know. I just don't know how you get that level of acumen academically when nothing is in place. It's unbelievable to me. And then he went off to college and double majored in math and accounting or whatever. And you just say, how is that even possible?
That's amazing. He obviously is a very good story. I enjoyed the way you all, just by happenstance, met each other. He's just walking past where you were helping or getting set up for a junior golf class that morning.
Literally.
So there's some other stories that'll come out of the East Lake Junior Golf Academy, but it was how many years did you do that? You started in 98, correct?
And I did it 9 years, actually. 8.5 years. Yep.
8.5 years. And from there, you went to Stanford to work for Conrad Ray. How did you go about getting that job? Conrad's one of my good friends and great colleagues in college coaching. He's a great guy. And I know you all won a national championship together. That's a big deal. Yeah. So how did that come about?
Yeah. So actually, I reverted back to the initial story with my brother. He continued to stay on me about trying out for a college job or whatever. And so when he gave me the website, one day I literally just looked and I saw the job. I saw the job. And the first thing I did, I picked up the phone and I called my wife at the time. I said, "You're not going to believe this." I said, "I just saw my next job." And she busted out laughing. She said, "What do you mean? You've been applying for jobs?" I said, "No, I have not applied for a job yet." So where is the job? I said, "It's at Stanford." She said, "Stanford? Is that the Stanford that's in California?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "I'm not going to California." I said, "I know you so well. I knew you were going to say that." She started laughing. I said, "So what we're going to do is when I get this job, we're going to put some money in an account. We'll fly back and forth to see each other. I'll come and see you and the kids a couple times a month, and you do the same." And we just laughed about it. And so a guy that I knew, he was volunteering for us. He loved to come around. He worked at Coke. A guy named Rocky. I love this guy. He was awesome for the kids. I said, "Hey, Rocky," I said, "I just saw a job at Stanford, man." I said, "My brother's been wearing me out about coaching in college." He said, "Did you forget I played golf at Stanford?" I said, "Honestly, I did, actually." He said, "I don't want to tell you this." He said, but he said, "At the end of the day," he said, "you deserve to be a college coach." I said, "Why would you say?" He said, "What you're giving these kids, you could give a program." He said, "I don't want to see you go, but I know you're eventually going to leave." And that's literally how it happened.
Wow.
There was not a lot of seeking out opportunities. I mean, I'm spiritually based. I believe my faith is strong. I just believe that God put things in front of me when it was time. And I really believe that.
It was definitely time. And not very many guys get to get hired and then they win a national championship basically right away. That was an amazing experience. So I remember a few of the players in that team, but one I remember was a kid I recruited when I was at Oklahoma State, Matt Savage.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, from Arizona. I remember Matt. I think his grandfather played on a national championship team at Stanford, if that's correct.
Smalls was we called him Smalls, but He was awesome. I mean, he and his dad, Tim, his mom, they were, I mean, biblically based. They were fantastic people. Uh, the perspective, the perspective of that team was really unique because everybody was so different. You know, you had a young man come in, number one AJJ player in the country, you know, Jordan Cox. You know, so everybody was looking at Jordan to be the great, you know, the next great Tiger Woods, so to speak. But then you had Joe Bramlett come in,
Yeah.
who was kind of under the radar, but yet those that knew he was a good player. But then you had one of the hardest working people in show business, like Rob Gruby, uh, who he really worked like he was an underserved, under athletic type guy. But when it came down to it, Gruby was the guy you had to have in that foxhole. And then you had one of the most athletic young people I'd ever been around in my life, which was Zach Miller. Zach was incredibly athletic. And so you take that mix of characters, not to include, you know, Dodge Kimmer, who worked hard and he ended up getting a career over on European Tour, and Daniel Lim and some of those guys. I mean, it was a really unique bunch of guys.
Well, and it was a team that ended up winning a national championship, which is a very, very difficult thing to do. We all know that. That's not easy.
Oh, yeah, totally.
So how long were you at Stanford after y'all won the national championship?
I made Conrad a promise. I made him a promise. I said, when I took the job, I said, Conrad, I'm an East Coast guy. I said, I tell him to this day. I just told Conrad this 3 weeks ago when I was out at Stanford and I saw him. I said, I always thank you for the opportunity, but I made him a promise. I said, I will only stay here until we win. I said, I'm an East Coast guy. My parents back in Carolina. My goal is to get back as close to the East as possible. I knew my son wanted to play college football, and I wanted to give him that opportunity back to something what I was accustomed to. So when we won, I left. Literally, I mean, I promised him, and Conrad initially I think he thought I was kidding, and I said, no, see, Ray, I got to go, man. I said I made the promise. I said I felt like he allowed me to recruit. I said this program is in good hands now. I said you the man. I said you're the. I tell him this every time I talk to him. He was the perfect hire for Stanford, based on demeanor, personality, and just everything he brings to the table. The perfect person for that spot. So I said, Conrad, once we win, I'm going to leave it in your hand. I'm going. And I think he got a little peeved with me a little bit, and then we kind of kissed and made up. But Conrad has always been there for me. We're really, really good friends. But yeah, as soon as we won, I left.
Did you go straight to Michigan State from there?
Yeah, straight to Michigan State. I figured it's funny. The first thing I checked out when they offered me the job, I had 3 schools call me at the same time. But I took to Michigan State because it was the only place where I could get a flight straight out back to Greensboro. A direct shot, one way. I didn't have any connections. That's why I took the job.
You know, that's 2 or 3 times you were making a decision based upon family.
Yep.
That's pretty impressive. Most people will make every decision based upon career. You know, how do I advance my career? You were trying to advance your career while at the same time putting family first.
100%.
That's great. Well, okay, so you've become the first African-American Division I Power 5 conference head golf coach. I remember the day it happened. And in fact, I remember the first time we met. Do you remember that time?
Well, I met you on a recruiting trail.
Yep.
I met you on a recruiting trail in Vegas, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
And I always had a ton of respect for you because I always prided myself in outworking. I had an old, even though I was a golfer, I played golf in college, grew up playing golf. I felt like I was a pretty good athlete. I had to work hard. It didn't come easy for me. But I'll never forget my old AAU coach, who back in Winston-Salem, who had also ended up working with Chris Paul and Josh Howard and all those guys that came after me. They were great basketball players. I was an average ball player at best. But I complained one morning because I got there at 7 o'clock, and I said to him, I got to the golf course at 6. I took all the golf carts out. I had to get on my bike and ride to the Y for AAU practice. And this man absolutely unloaded on me. He said, you starting at 7, you're already an hour behind my son. My son starts every day at 6. Now, this guy, my AAU coach, he played with the Knicks, was a super college player out of Utah. He said, so just think about it. In a week's time, you're already a minimum of 7 hours behind my son. And you actually call yourself an athlete. You actually think you'll ever be as good as my son. I said, think about the extra time he's putting in while you're playing golf. And he took a basketball and he mushed me, pushed the ball in my chest. He said, I'm going to show you why you don't know what you're talking about. You're going to play me one-on-one right now. And this old man, I say, oh, he was in his 40s then. This man, Tiki Burden, beat me up. Do you hear me? I mean, physically, he physically beat me up on that court. When I left the gym that day, I said to myself, this is the one. And I was 15 years old. I'll never forget. I said, I will never be outworked again. I will never complain about an early start. And I will promise you, I will never be outworked. No one will outwork me again. So when I got into college coaching, I used to tell Conrad, I said, Conrad, I said, I know we're starting golf out here with workouts at 6 o'clock. I said, I need to start my day at 4 because I realize on the East Coast, these folks are getting up at 6 and 7. So if I start when I think they're starting and I go 2 or 3 hours later and it's late on their end, I'm going to get the upper hand. I'll know more recruits. I'll have a better relationship with recruits. I will know all the ins and outs. I will be able to stay on top of abreast of technology and everything else dealing with the game. And I just took that. I took that into when I got the head coach at Michigan State and I showed up in Vegas. I said, I'm going to get to this golf tournament early. It was about 6:45. It was still kind of dark out. I said, I'm going to be the first coach here because I want every player to see me first. I pull up in the parking lot. I get to the range. And you're already standing on the range. I said, you got to be kidding me. I said, how did Coach McGraw beat me? And I didn't even know you at the time. So I looked you up and I'm reading all these kudos and accolades. And I said, you got to be kidding. So we meet and then we get out on the course and you gave me a nugget of wisdom. We're watching a kid. You walked up, we're watching a kid. You were at the big school. And I'm telling you, the kid was shaking in his boots. And I said to you, I looked over you, I said, man, I feel bad. I think we made the guy nervous. And you looked at me and you said, if he's nervous, that 2 coaches are out here watching, what is he going to do when a lot of people are watching an actual tournament? And I never thought about it that way. And I walked away and told a couple of my buddies because I started really researching you. And I told a couple of my buddies, I said, hey, I actually think I just met one of the best coaches in the country. I said, if I can be half as successful as this man is right now, I know I would have done a great job as a coach. And when I finally lay my whistle down, it'll be job well done.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. You're too kind, but I do remember the day we met. I remember that. And honestly, I got that from my dad. My dad was a work ethic guy that was raising 7 children and he had to get up early to go to the office. And he taught me to get up early. So I've never gotten out of that habit. But you learned some pretty good habits from your dad as well. I know. Absolutely. Reading in the book, that man's very special to you. And so what do you think the best thing is your dad gave you that made you a great coach? What did he give you?
I think the first thing my dad gave me, my dad has an unbelievable abundance of grace when he's dealing with young people. And my dad was a principal for a long, long time. He was an unbelievable golfer. One of the best guys I've ever seen. To this day, I've never seen anybody who could putt as well as my dad. But he had a lot of grace when it came to people and young people. He dealt with the worst situations and he dealt with it through jokes and laughter. And so even now when I deal with players and I'm stressed or things are coming sideways, we're not playing well, I don't beat the kids up. I'm very transparent and I'm incredibly honest, but I realize, hey, it can be better. This is just not the worst thing life can deal us right now. It can always be better. And I say to myself all the time, if I can be half of the man my father is because of his grace and the things that he has exuded to others, his willingness to give. If I can be that guy, I've lived a great life. Yeah, I really believe that.
He's made you a better person, a better coach. That's great. I like to always ask my guests on here, kind of what influence their dad or mom or both had on them. And Obviously, you had great parenting, grew up in North Carolina with a couple of parents who valued education. They were both involved with education. I mean, that's huge. And you used education to try to get kids out of Eastlake or out of that situation they were in. So, I mean, you were both educators. We're in education. That's what we do. So
100%. Yeah, I'm very grateful to my mom and dad. And it's funny, I saw him the other day, and my dad is blind. He's been blind 25 years. And the first thing I asked him when he lost his sight, I said, because it was bothering me, because I knew it was going to be an extra burden on my mom. And I said, hey, you ever just get mad at God? He took your sight. Think about it. As great a golfer as you were, you can't play anymore. You can't drive anymore. My dad looked at me, because he always turns to when he hears the sound of the voice. He said, why would I ever be upset with God? He said, God has allowed me to see things that people with their eyesight for their entire life will never have a chance to see. He said, you and I going to Augusta, you and I playing St. Andrews, playing golf and spending time in Bermuda, all the places around the world we've been, meeting some of your players, seeing your national championship wins. He said, those things can never be taken away from me. He said, I would rather always have my memory instead of my eyes. And that's when I had to look at his disability even differently. Because for a minute, I was pissed off that it had happened to him. But as I sat back and I listened to him, if he has taken what seems to be this tragic loss of sight so well, how can I choose to do something to the contrary? And especially the blessing in that is he realized that it was not his doing that lost his sight. It's hereditary. All of my dad's siblings are blind. All of the living ones right now are blind. And the doctors explained it's genetic. And so that being the case, we had a doctor say to my dad, he said, the situations that you guys have with your eyes, typically we only see in white families. We never see in black families. And then that's when we told the doctor, well, my dad's granddaddy on one side was white. My dad's grandmother on the other side was white. So they got passed down through the genes. But the way he has taken it, it's been awesome. If you can ever find a light, a beacon of light in something that's negative, that would be it.
Well, that's a heavy dose of perspective, but also a great testament to what faith means to your dad, how he passed that down to you, and how you're able to do that with your players. So our example, we forget how important our example is for our players. You just described it with your dad's example to you and how it's trickling down into other generations. And that's wonderful. So obviously you spent time in Michigan State. You all had some success there. You did.
Yeah, it was a fun time. We won Big Ten. We were ranked. We won a lot of tournaments. But I think for me, the big thing, what I kept trying to every stop I've tried to just wanted to make family. I just wanted to me, family is the most important part. And so Michigan State was just another example. I realized that the plan I had in place worked. The people I surrounded myself with the program, and it wasn't all smooth and clean. I mean, we had some interesting times from the community, not so much programmatically, but at the same time, it worked. And so at that point, I was really comfortable to say, hey, you know what? I know the plan works now. Now, all I can do, if I can find some level of diversity, I'm sure I can help change the game.
Well, you've done it. There's no doubt about that. And you have ended up at Howard University right now, which is currently where you are. I want to ask you about your players in a second, but I'm going to ask another question before we get to the current position. You played competitive golf, obviously, at Tennessee State University. You were captain of your team. Now you've described some of the experiences you had with Conrad out there, but what specifically as a player have you, like a good player, and your dad was an All-American, what have you taken from that to help you be a better coach? I mean, from your playing experience?
I think from my playing experience, what I realized is that tomorrow can always be better. If I put the work in, I always try to outwork everybody. When I was a player, I tried to only play to my strengths, not my weaknesses. And there were times you go out with guys when you're in something competitive, and instead of focusing on what you're focusing on, when the guys out driving you 20, 30 yards, all of a sudden you're trying to reach deeper. You're trying to get that extra 5, that extra 10. All of a sudden you're blaming it on your putting if you miss 6, 7 attempts for birdie. But I always try to take from playing to coaching is now I try to put it all in perspective. So there are reasons that we do what we do. Am I really not a good putter if I miss a lot of putts? How close is my approach shot? Maybe I'm not hitting the iron as well as I should be hitting. All right. Am I doing those things? Am I sleeping properly? That was a big thing from playing to coaching. I never thought about how my body would respond with limited rest and recovery. As a player, I never thought about it. As a player, I never really thought about what I was eating. I just eat whatever I wanted to eat and think that it was all nutrition was good nutrition. And that was not the case. And so as a player, my dad used to always say to me, my dad would say, if you're a good player, you could take a hickory stick and put a head on it and swing it and score if you're a good player. Well, I don't believe that. And as a player, I did believe it. But now as a coach, I really don't believe it because I feel like now the guys that are really making it, there's a science involved now. I didn't know the science. My dad I used to hear the old stories from the 50s, late 40s and 50s where, you have to go get an iron. It's the only one you have. And when you run the grooves out, you take a hatchet and you put new grooves in. Well, that might have worked in the 50s. That won't work today. It is important for a young man or young woman to get a new set of wedges every now and then. It is important to know when you're focusing on spin, how to make it spin left, how to make it spin right. It is important to know how far you carry the ball. Some of those things were tried and true back in the day, but I think right now, as a coach, I see they're more evident than ever. And just those small things, it seems small, but they're actually huge in the big scheme of coaching, I think.
I think you're right. And that's something that I've had to adapt to, adjust, and kind of evolve as time has gone on. Luckily, I have a millennial aged assistant coach that kind of keeps me in the game with that. But so I'm going to ask you another question regarding coaching. So what is one thing you do as a coach that you believe is unique that would help any young coach? Heck, that would help me. That it's something you do or you've created or discovered. Maybe it wasn't all by yourself, but something you do at Howard that you think is unique that would help every other coach.
I had a coach walk up to me at a tournament on this past weekend. He asked me the same question. And my answer to him was, if you make it about a family and it's a family that you can live with. So I take it off of the golf course when I deal with young people. I want to know about your mom. I want to know about your dad. I want to know your girlfriend. I want to know what in your life makes you tick. I want to know what music you listen to. I want to know what NFL team, the NBA teams. I know the kids on my team that can care less about other sports, but I know the ones that are diehard YouTube fans. And what I do is I play on what they like. I don't try to make them like what I like. I don't try to steer a kid that hates to play and wants to be a range rat. I have to give him a mix of it. Some kids love to play. Some kids love to just hit balls. I try to meet the players where they are, and that's not unique, but it's one of those things where it's so simple that it's very complex. We're talking to students and we're asking them to shoot good scores, but we don't know if they're straining and stressing over an exam in another week or an exam they just had. We don't know if there are things going on in the family and they're not able to conceptualize that day all of the data in that yardage book that they need because there's other things on their mind. those are small, trivial things that I think mean a lot. I think a lot of coaches, in my personal opinion, the coaches that win at the highest level are coaches that are able to embrace and ingratiate and really, really take that to heart. I think a lot of times you'll see programs and players where they have really, really good players, they struggle because you're basically fighting a culture. There's a culture shift. The pendulum has swung in a direction now, and I think it's very difficult for a lot of coaches to change with the times. But I do think that level of having what you and I have, some of the old man coaches in us, I think that's still important too. But being willing to shift and adjust with the times, I think, is huge. But I invite those kids on my team. They come to my house. They're like family. I take them I've done this already with Howard, with my men's team twice. Anytime I'm close to, I did it 2 weeks ago. If I'm close to my parents, I drive the guys through to meet my parents. My dad can't see them, but I want those guys. My dad, I walked outside the other day after we finished the tournament. I heard my dad telling these guys stories about him playing college golf. He played 4 years in college. He never lost a match. And he talked about making shaping shots. And just watching the guys listen to my dad, for me, is invaluable.
I love that. A really dear friend of mine right here in Waco, Texas, he coaches at McLennan Junior College, Vince Clark. That's his, like you said, it's not unique, but that's his whole focus, is how to get these kids to be a family.
Right.
And when you do that, I think I think you get some benefits you're never going to be able to quantify, but they're there. And I've never heard anybody say they take them by to meet their parents. I love that idea. If my parents were still alive, I would do that absolutely, because that's really special. They can see the human side of you outside the coaching part of it. That's great. Really, really good. So, okay, let's talk about your current team then. So these kids you just took over to meet your mom and dad last week. I'm sure you've got them all in your head of where they're from. I mean, how do you you got one kid from Uganda. Now that's recruiting right there. That's bringing tell me about your kids on your team currently at Howard.
Yeah, so I'll start with the Ugandan kid, Edmond. So I actually, several years ago, I had a guy approach me and said, hey, I'm going to start doing some stuff in Uganda, and these players over here need a lot of help. He said, would you be interested in helping? So initially I said no, because I didn't really know what that looked like until I actually had a chance. I met a couple of them. And so when they actually went back to Uganda, he said, hey, you've met a couple. What do you think? I said, just let me know, and I'll go to Uganda with you. I go to Uganda, and I'm not even kidding you, Coach. There's a line of 45, 50 kids waiting in line just for me to watch their swing. Just to show them how to put their hand on the club, talk to them about how to grind, how to experience, how to practice, just how to game, how to come to America, the whole 9 yards. And so develop that relationship, and then as time will come forward, a few of those kids come to the States, and I end up with Edmond on my team now. But the crux of my team are transfers. I have a young man from Eastern Michigan. I have a young man from University of Memphis, kid from Livingstone, kid from Hampton. Those students were brought in because they're good students, but number one, they're also in a position where I knew it would be difficult to build with all freshmen trying to compete with the Baylors of the world. I don't stand a chance. And I'm still behind the 8-ball competing with the Baylors of the world. But at the same time, I like my chances with older guys because they know kind of what to expect or what I'm dealing with. So in that respect, I like older players that have come from somewhere else, because now you don't have to convince them of where they can go and what's out there, because they've seen the other side. And so I have a very talented group of young men and young women. You know, we just started a women's program as well. And we had a tournament up at Bucknell. And one of my young ladies, a freshman, she just won the whole event.
Oh, really? What's her name?
Yeah. Reese Wilson.
Congratulations, Reese. That's fantastic.
Yeah, she shot 70, 76, 72. She won the event. So if you put the effort in, I'm old fashioned. If you put good gas in your car, your motor is going to run efficiently well. And so I have a great group of young men, great group of young women. And we have a long way to go, but it's fun it's fun fighting this journey with folks that are willing to fight.
Yeah, but how many people get an opportunity to build a program from ground up?
True.
And let's talk about that real quick. Just a quick snippet. Steph Curry obviously has been huge for both programs, but
absolutely,
have you been able to develop a relationship with Steph?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, spent time with him. We played golf together. We text, we talk. He's been fantastic. And I know I've heard people say, I kind of laugh. I've heard people say, yeah, well, he gives money, yada, yada. Well, I'm excited, not so much from his money, but from his verbiage. When Greg won, the student on my team, when Greg won PGA Works, he's FaceTimed me. He's as excited as I am. He had been watching scores. He FaceTimes me. He wants to FaceTime Greg. He's talking to the team. He's encouraging them. He's pumping them up. When some of these kids come up with some creative things, when we get out to Pebble, he's there. He wants to walk with them and give them advice, talk to them about how he works out to see how they can, infuse some things in their workout regimen as well. Yeah, he's been fantastic.
What a great example, role model, and a man of faith Steph is. He's really one of the great professional athletes in the world today.
I agree, 100%.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I'm glad that he's helped you get that program going. Really thrilled that you've got still have a lot of enthusiasm, and you have a program that's building. It's building. Yeah. You've got so much ahead of you, I know, and you're excited about it. But tell me about the schedule for the rest of this year.
Yeah, so for the men, we next tournament we play at Georgetown up at Four Streams, a beautiful golf course. There'll be a lot of good competition. Then we host one at Woodmont, which is one of the best courses in Maryland. And then our final tournament for the fall is up at Townsend. So the fall, we're going to end the fall really well, great events. My goal as a coach was to give these students great competition, but also great experiences.
Well, you're doing that obviously with those golf courses. And when I saw you last month at Merido, I mean, you're talking about a great field on a championship golf course. That's trial by fire right there, isn't it?
Well, I just feel like, at the end of the day, I mean, you go to college, you dream, I never forget when I went to college, my coach, I guess it was her recruiting tool. She said, yeah, you have a chance to compete against Phil Mickelson and Paul Azinger. Now, it never happened, but it got me pretty excited. So I said, when I became a coach, I said, why not give these players an opportunity to compete against some of the best players in the country? Because what other way can we gauge or treat ourselves if we've never played the best? And so I'm big on experience. Yeah, we threw them in the deep end on purpose. Luckily, nobody drowned.
Well, they didn't. And you had a player, Greg Odom, shot a final round 75, which honestly, on that golf course, under those conditions, that's a pretty good round of golf.
No, I agree. Yeah, 75 is a good score on that golf course. And it was a good experience, a unique experience for him. And then he came back the next week because I was kind of worried with that beat him down. And after a tough first round, the second week he came back. He went 5 over, 4 under, I think even par or whatever. So for me, that's solid. That's good golf. He was getting back to normal. So you have to have people in your program that – I'll tell you something I heard, and I believe this as a coach. Coach Izzo told me once – I used to talk to Coach Izzo and his staff a lot at Michigan State.
Mm-hmm.
Coach Izzo said, he said, Coach, we oftentimes, whether we know it or not, we recruit players in our own image. I had never quite thought about that because I was reading my pastor's book recently, and he talked about Jesus being in God's image, but Jesus is the only guy. If you think about this, it blew me away. Jesus is the only guy with God's DNA.
That's it.
So when I thought about what he wrote in his book, Pastor Hartley's book, then I said to myself, well, wait a minute. If we're recruiting players in our own image, it's the same sort of setup that we don't even know we're doing. And so if that means maybe I'm describing myself, but I try to recruit tough-minded, resilient, academically enhanced young people that also have some level of personality. You can't always get it that way, but if I can have a semblance of some of that in each player, I'm going to be a pretty good coach. Coach Bill Walsh told me, I said, Coach Walsh, I said, I really believe you're the best coach to ever coach in the NFL. He started laughing. He said, one thing I need you to remember, I'm the same guy that used to coach the Bengals. And I said, and I laughed, but then I said, you know what? That tells me you always stay humble. You're only as good as your players. Period.
Very, very good. You know, you've had some pretty impressive people to be around, championship coaches as mentors. That's pretty amazing. But let's talk again before we finish. First of all, thank you for coming on today. You've shared some great stories, given me some really good nuggets of wisdom that I can take personally that are going to help me, but my listeners I know will love. But the book, Diamonds in the Rough, I read it. I love it. The cover says the shining success story of inspiration, faith, and hope in Eastlake. So I want you to tell people how they can get the book. And then I want to encourage my listeners to think about reading this book because it has a lot of inspiring stories of kids that have overcome. So how can they get the book?
They can go to Amazon. They can go to Amazon.com or even BarnesandNobles.com. And it's Diamonds in the Rough by Samuel Puryear. It's on there. It's also on, if they want to download it to Kindle, they can as well. I actually think it's a great book for programs. If programs have players that read together, I think it's a good book for all college golfers. Because I think nowadays we have to realize a way to keep that expert golfer grounded. Golf is the one game where I think it's easy to get away from your roots. The better you get, you fall away from the true travels and trials of what it takes to be good. And I think that book is also a really good read for those folks to realize, hey, there's a lot of lives we can change in every single community. And it doesn't even take money. Some of these players on some of these championship quality college teams go into a neighborhood, once a year and talk to some students about how to play college golf or give a 30-minute session on chipping or putting. That costs you nothing. That costs you absolutely nothing.
Yeah, you never know what impact it's going to have on one single kid who might change the world one day.
Exactly.
So, well, I appreciate that. I've got my copy. I'm going to keep it in my coaching library, which I've got in my golf office at home, and I'll encourage all my listeners to read it. Great book, Diamonds in the Rough by Sam Puryear. Sam, thank you very much, Coach, for coming on today. I want to wish you the best of luck for the remainder of this season and going forward.
And the same to you guys. And it was a pleasure seeing you a month ago, and good luck the rest of the way.
All right. Sounds good, Sam. Thanks again.
Thank you. Take care.